talk about what it looks like to be a good teammate when you're fighting for a spot. I know that on basketball, there's only really 15 scholarships, 5 people playing, and so it can kind of be intense when you're fighting for a spot. But let's start with what preseason looked like. How did your coaches determine who was starting? What did that look like for you guys?
Well, first of all, I stepped into a team where I was on a veteran team, so it was mainly seniors that had already kind of solidified. Well, I say solidified, but they've proven themselves to the coaches. The coaches know how they play in games. They know who they trust. And then the freshmen and sophomores just kind of have to earn that trust. But mainly, you earned for my team. He chose the starting 5 within the first week of practice, and that starting 5 stayed the entire year. So how you performed in practice was crucial, hence my anxiety before practices.
Right.
But and it was he would literally track things in practice, how many stops your team got in this drill and your shooting percentage in this drill. So he stuck to numbers, but he also picked the starting 5 within that first week of practice. And that first closed scrimmage that we had, the starting 5, I can almost guarantee that was going to be the same starting 5 that finished the year, unless a injury or something weird happened like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very bizarre. It almost, to me, it always felt like I had no control over my situation.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good I did in practice, there was still going to be that girl that started because she was picked in the beginning of the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm looking around and you guys are all
yeah.
Oh,
but it happened, I promise.
Yeah. At Virginia, I felt like it was like that for me,
Mm-hmm.
which, again, you feel like you don't have control because preseason is long. Preseason is almost 2 months, if not 2 months. And so that's a long time to be prepping for your season.
Mm-hmm.
Practices are long. But yeah, I just felt like you had a really small margin of error, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And she decided really early on who she wanted to start. And so I just remember, I think it was my sophomore year, one of my teammates, she was a year older than me, was literally placed on scout team after the first week or the first few days.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a chance to fight for a spot. And that's so devastating because the season is so long, we haven't even started, and you're already being told hey, your chances to play this year, not really there at all. You're not even in a rotation. I'm not considering you for a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was also the year where there were a lot of guards. We had as a post player, I was thank goodness. I was she needs me.
Right.
But the guards, we just had so many guards. And so I just remember hearing so much frustration from them because it's especially my freshman year, we had 3 senior guards. All 3 of our seniors were guards. And then you have the freshmen, there were 2 of them who were guards as well. Then you have everyone in between. And so our guards, when we told it post and guard, it was 3-4 posts and the rest of the team was guards.
Yeah.
And so just the level of animosity and competitiveness that came out during preseason was crazy that year because you just had to fight. And sometimes it did feel like the coach just chose and you just kind of had to fall in the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could that girl redshirt? When she got put on the scout team, was she even given an opportunity to redshirt if she wanted to?
She didn't redshirt that year. And I think it was partly because the whole time she was thinking I think I still have a chance. I think I still have a chance to play. And I think that, I don't know the rules around redshirting, but I think you have a certain point in the season, unless you get injured, where you can be I'm going to redshirt.
6 games.
Yeah, you have to
something.
play or not play in a game,
Yeah, and there's always that chance of garbage time or the minutes at the end of the game.
Minutes.
Yeah, and the thing is you're well, can we have a conversation about this, because I don't want my whole season to go down the drain if you're just going to give me pity minutes. I don't want that. But I know for myself, when I played, one of the years there was another post player. She's awesome, and we were really close throughout my time at UVA. But I just remember when preseason started, we would stop talking to each other, and it was we just. And it, for 2 months, would not say a word. We'd be in the locker room, change, do our thing, leave. And then we both lost the same spot that we were going for that year. And after that, we were both oh my gosh, it's so good to see you again. It's only she would know what it felt like to lose that spot. Like, if I wanted to vent to someone, she's probably the perfect person to. And the fact that, fortunately, that year I had someone to go to about that, because usually you lose a spot and you're just, like, bitter about yourself. But I had her to be bitter with, and ultimately her to, like, pick me up and be like, hey, you know, you still know the player you are. Things will be good. Like, just keep working. And so that was really helpful. But for me, like, that's probably my biggest story around like what it looks like to fight for a spot and still be a good teammate, because she did a lot of teaching. She's older than me, around like what it looks like to still cheer your team on and not be the bitter teammate in the corner, you know, because that's I think it happens often where you're just bitter at the end of it. What about you?
I don't really relate to like the starting five was like fluctuated a lot at my school, and it also depended on like who we were playing. You know, if we were playing a team that had a certain lineup, or a team that had a lot more size than us, or a team, you know, I think our starting five would fluctuate some. Not drastically by any means, but I did think there were times in practice where, you know, you were either on the black team or the gold team, you know, and if you know, whatever team was starting, I do think you could still kind of make a name for yourself on the other team if you were making the starting group look bad. You know, I don't know if you would always get a spot, but you might have got coach's attention that week, and then you might be the first sub, you know. So, but my coaches were very fair in terms of, like, they didn't care if you were a freshman, it didn't matter. You know, if you were doing what you're supposed to do, for the most part, you were playing. So that was really nice. I didn't have much of that, but I mean, definitely competing for spots was, you know, that was definitely a thing.
Yeah. I think sometimes something that happens that I find to be really toxic is like coaches may pin you up against a teammate. Like, she's in the gym, and it's like, well, that's wonderful, because we are actually on the same team and I want her to get better. And I think it is important to kind of have healthy like tension between the team, like pushing each other to get better. But sometimes I think it can get out of hand. Specifically, I mean, I don't know about men's teams, but on female teams, it's just, I mean, it's a bunch of girls. Like, you know, it can get kind of catty. I think the best way to just be a good teammate, though, and my advice around that is to understand, like, some days you're going to be on the mountaintop and some days you're in the valley. And like, if you've been in the valley, you know what it feels like to have teammates that are trying to pull you out. You understand what it feels like to have teammates that are like, well, at least it's not me. Like, we've all been there.
Right.
And so just understanding that, like, that could be you. But also just being happy for your team's success. I think that's something that's really hard when you're younger. Like, it just comes with maturity. And I think I look back now at, was I a good teammate? Was I a good leader? And I don't know. Like, I think I did my best that I could. But looking back, I think there could have been things I could have done better in terms of just reaching out to my teammates about their games. Like, hey, you seem to be taking this really hard. Like, let's talk about it. Like, what's going on here? And just like seeing them as people and not just competition, you know? Yeah.
I always think, like, you know, whenever it comes to being a good teammate, like, what do I want to be remembered for? Like, whenever I'm older and I haven't played basketball in 20 years, like, what is, like, she going to remember about me? Is she going to remember that I was just doing anything I could to kind of, like, take her legs out from under her so that I could get the playing time? Or is she going to remember whenever I reached out to her when I saw that she was struggling? Or the relationship that we had, like, leaning on each other whenever we were both struggling, like, cheering each other on in the triumphs and the success, but also being there, like, in the failure, that type of thing. Like, that always kind of, no matter what was going on with me, and I think it also is because of my people-pleasing issues that I have, like, I care what people think, and, like, I just want to be remembered for, like, you know, being there for people and being selfless and not, you know, because basketball is so temporary, and it's, like, it doesn't define you. What defines you is, like, how you treat people.
Sure.
Sorry, I went on my tangent. I didn't
No, that's okay. My situation was unique, of course, because I came in with 8 other freshmen, right? So there wasn't really, it was like, how are you going to prove yourself amongst those other girls? Because, I mean, some of us aren't going to play, right? So it was like, rise to the top, at least in terms of that group. So I don't remember a lot about, I know we played a lot of pickup. I remember not really knowing where I would shake out. I had played against most of the girls who I'd gone to Georgia College with within like the region in some way, or like they grew up in Georgia. So like I knew their game, I knew my game, but honestly just never knew where I would stack up. So I was fortunate to win at a starting spot. And so like the rest of my time there, you know, my obstacles were not about whether I was going to be in the starting lineup at the end of the day. But in terms of being a good teammate, the girls that I respected and wanted to be on the court were the girls who were not backing down in practice. Yeah. And like they were trying to make, yes, they're trying to fight for their spot, but like they want to make me better because they want our team to be better. Yeah. Like, and so I think part of being a good being a good teammate is like showing up your best every day, even when the chips are stacked against you and you're not going to be the one playing. Like your other teammates notice that,
right? Absolutely.
Right? And like some, depending on what their relationship is with the coach, like they may say, "Look, Cassidy is killing it in practice. Like we're working well as a team. Like, can we try that? Like, can we, like they can advocate for you in a space where you may not be in that position with the coach, and they may, be a leader on the team or something, and the way that they see you can be important as well. So I think, being a good teammate is the ultimate goal. Is what does the success for the team looks like? What does it look like, and how can I play that role?
Right. Yeah. I think that's huge. I think that's just huge because it's just so important to look at your teammates and be like, hey, are you making me better? I think with scout team, it's a hard position to play. Yeah. It's so hard for some people, they play it the whole season and you just know you're not going to play. Sometimes like if you're on a team that rotates it. But I know those players are pivotal for the success of the team. And I remember being on a Virginia team and one of our scout team players, I mean, she just got so good over the course of time because you become the player that they're about to play. So if I'm playing someone from Duke, she becomes that crafty guard that gets the basket. We're playing someone from Louisville, she's now the shooter. And I'm like, whoa, you have gotten so good because like practice is like your time to shine. And she's always developing new skills. Like maybe this girl's a spin move. Maybe this girl is like really good with the crossover, loves to go left, like whatever it is. And so I think there is value in that. But I think my favorite thing about this teammate that I'm talking about was she just brought it every single day. And it wasn't like, while most people would look at that position and be like, oh, well, you're not playing, she just was really like, this is my role. And this is what I'm, and the next year she came in and she played huge minutes and continued to have a great career. But sometimes it's just like a stint in your career that you have to like endure. But I think it's always better to be able to endure it when you're under good leadership. And so just like kind of transitioning into a conversation on leadership, what does leadership look like on a team? I feel like it's not always what people think it is. I think oftentimes people think it's like the person that's talking the most, and it's not. Like, it's not always the person who is visibly doing the right things. It's like it just looks different. So what does good leadership look like to you guys?
I think like the first word that pops in my head is just somebody that's so selfless, like putting the team before yourself, putting like somebody else's feelings over your own, like just being totally selfless, like servant-hearted, like wanting to serve everyone. Because like you said, it's not always the person that's, after a loss, the first person to talk. It could be like the most quiet person in the room. It could be the person that doesn't play at all. It's just somebody that's always looking to serve and love on like their teammates and just, do whatever you can to help them reach their potential so that in turn, like the team can like rise up too. So I just think just selfless people, I think, are just such great leaders. I don't think I've always been most impacted by like the quiet leaders versus like the powerful like bigger personalities. Not to say that those aren't like influential, because they absolutely are. I've just always appreciated, because again I'm like very emotionally like driven. I've always appreciated the people that like don't think about themselves first. They think about everybody else.
Yeah. I think, the quiet leader, they're special, I think, because when they speak up, it's serious. You know that they have something good to say. I think oftentimes, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of like the program, but that was a big thing.
We did the program.
Yeah. So
did y'all?
We did the program at Virginia and it almost tore us apart.
Yeah,
like
we did the program at App and it wasn't that successful either.
Explain the program. Explain what the program is.
Oh, it's just a group that comes to like train your team, and they have a military background, and it's for us it was 3 individuals. I don't know how many came.
I think it was 2 for us.
We had a couple guys and a female come to train your team in the preseason. So you do like conditioning stuff, but also team building, and it's supposed to relate to your sport.
It killed us.
Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah. You know, ours was a week long, the program, and we were doing physical activities, but had a lot of meetings about how that went. Like they present challenges to your team, and you're competing. So our team, for some of ours, we were split up into 2 groups. And then they would present the challenge. And then they were supposed to like help our coaches find who the leaders were. Mm-hmm. That was a main goal of the program. Yeah, it was difficult. And they also meet with the coaches before, and the coaches get to tell them whatever they want about you. So they already know some qualities that you have as a person, and they try to like go at those. It is intense. It was really hard, and some of our leaders crumbled in that too. But yeah, that was the program.
Yeah, I think the same thing kind of came from for us. The program came, I think the coaches tell what they want in the beginning, and I think our coaches, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I'm sure all my teammates have their own and our coaches have their own, but I think they had an idea of who they wanted to be successful and who was a leader. Mm-hmm. And so when that person didn't rise to the occasion, or they were put in a leadoing position, and it was like, what are we doing? Like no one was doing, we weren't working in the same direction. It was kind of like, oh, like who are the leaders? Mm-hmm. And I think the reason why I love this conversation about leadership is because sometimes the leader isn't like who you want it to be or who you think it is. It's like, it's going to become very evident who that person is. Yep. I know on my team, I had a leader who, she was like our best player in the game in general. Like whenever she got on the court, she only led by example. I had another teammate who never got in the game, would only lead vocally. Sure. And I think that while they were both great respectively, you kind of need a mixture of both. You need someone who's going to lead by example. You need someone who's going to talk like vocally. But also I think the part that like a lot of people don't talk about is like you need people who want to follow. Yeah, you have to have influence. Like that's what I think too. I remember like a few leaders that I had, and they were, it just seemed to be they were always upperclassmen, especially when I was young. But they just like everyone wanted to be with them. Like if it's a drill and it's competitive or something, everyone is running to their team. And I think that's who you want to follow, But I agree with like you need a mixture of the talent and the vocal, because some people are very good vocal leaders, but they don't have like any skill to back it up and that's hard for people, I think, that have a lot of skill, but they don't have that talent. It's a tough conversation, and sometimes you want your quote unquote best player to be your leader, but they're just not. Yeah. They just need to go play and, Yeah. What was it about that like senior leader, that upperclassman leader that really set them apart, where you're like, oh, I just really want to be around them? I think that there's an intangible thing that we always. She gave everyone else confidence. Like she was like, if you're about to be on my team, we're going to win this. So let's go. Like, you need to give me your best self because we're going to do well. And she was fantastic. She had a ton of confidence also, but just very, she was really kind too, but competitive. And I think, our coaches did kind of make her the leader, but we knew that like things ran by her. If we were going to succeed, she was going to be a part of it. So I've heard, being a servant, like calling people to hire. What is one thing that you think?
Yeah, what Katie said, I think you alluded to it. Just like there's a balance that has to happen. If you were to, not every team is able to build a leader, right? So a lot of coaches are left with either picking someone, or you do have the kid on the bench who's leading vocally, but your kid on the floor is not saying much, but they're leading by example. And like you said, that doesn't always equate to a good situation because, well, the girls on the floor need to be led during the game.
Mm-hmm.
So if their local leader is on the bench, like that's not helpful either.
Right.
So are they out there without a general, you know, that sort of thing. I think leadership for me has just been like this very long journey. And I spoke to you about it on the podcast that growing up, I was always, I don't know, they would call it bossy today, whatever. I call it a leader, but, but like I'm class president, like I'm that kid. Mm-hmm. So I always thought I knew what leading was. So even when, you know, I got to college and I'm captain of the team, like I'm thinking, I've done this before. Like I'm the person who does this. Like I'm gonna drag my teammates along. Like we're gonna win. Like whether that takes yelling or whatever. Like and over time, and really a wake up call my senior year. I don't know what the program was that, you know, that our coach put a group of seniors through, but we had to ask our teammates like what they thought of us essentially.
Ooh, man.
And yeah, and it went about as well as you expected. You know, one of them, you know, actually like stepped up and was just like, yeah, you don't always say things like the right way to people. And I was like, I almost like blew it off like whatever, kid. But like started to like reflect on that and think through what that meant. And there have been some situations where, which is horrible today. Like, you know, a freshman had come in and she didn't come to our voluntary, because that's what happens in D2. It was like a voluntary pickup game.
Sure.
And right.
Voluntary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And truthfully it was like our coaches didn't put it together, but like as captains we expected everybody to be there, and we called her, like I think we were short numbers as well. We're like, hey, where are you? She's like, I'm on the way to Walmart with my friends. And I'm like, I'm not sure why that's happening. Like, and I'm like, you need to get here. Like we are trying to play. Like you're holding us, like we're trying to get better. You're holding us back. And so that was one of those like big examples that they gave me. It was like that I had like overstepped my bounds with that. Still to this day, I will argue that I would do it again probably today. So maybe I haven't learned totally. But I think the biggest thing that came out of that experience was you can't communicate to people the same way. And I think that that's a huge part of like the leading journey that people have to come to, because everybody looks at, you know, Michael Jordan, you know, we all watched Last Dance, where it was just like, he just kept pounding on his teammates, like, you have to raise your level to meet me. Right. And like, sure, that works for some people. Right. But I would guess for our generation, for our sport in particular, that's not always the best way to get a group of people for you to be influential. Yeah. So in short, just that, you know, you may have to like take a teammate to dinner and talk to them separately than you would like if there's a kid who she does rise to the occasion when you're at practice and you're like firing her up, like, let's go, like you're gonna have to like dig in, like you're better than this. There's some people that works for. That doesn't work for everybody. So I think that was a big part of our journey, just trying to figure out how to meet people where they are. Now after basketball, it's difficult to apply those, right? Like in the workplace, it's just
not taking you to dinner, you know.
Right. It's difficult to apply those, but in terms of leading a large team working toward a huge goal, like I mean, that was like the hands down the biggest thing I learned.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like the phrase, knowing your personnel. Like we talk about that all the time for scout, you know, when you're studying a team, or just even your teammates. Like you need to know how to give someone the ball in the right place where they could be successful. Like don't bounce pass it to the shooter. She hates that. Like give her a nice pass you know, in the pocket. Whatever that looks like. It's the same thing for people's personalities and how they respond to you. Knowing like, are they someone who needs the soft skills? They need to know that you care about them outside of the court before they can perform for you on the court. I think that's the same thing for coaching. Like coaches, like I was the person who needed a player's coach. I need to know that you care about me off the court. I'll run through a wall for you on the court. But that's the same thing with your teammates. Like, and I think I'm glad that you touched on that because it's so important.
There's a quote. It's building bridges of relationship that can bear the weight of truth. That's probably like the biggest leadership principle that I've taken away. It's actually, I mean, it's Tim Elmore, so I told you that's where I worked at Growing Leaders. But like so much of leading is like people have to trust you, and I think you know self-awareness is obviously huge, and that was what that exercise was. Like I had no idea that's how they were perceiving me, and honestly, I'm not sure that I cared too much before that. Like even if they had told me that, I probably would have been like, look, girl, like, get on board. We're trying to win some games. Like, toughen up. But like the lack of self-awareness where if I were to talk to a teammate, I would have probably said like, at the end of the day, they know that I'm going to show up for them. Mm-hmm. Like if they had gotten into trouble somewhere on campus or they were in a tough situation, like in my mind, I was like, they know that I will show up for them. Am I going to like, if you did something wrong, I'll be like, look, you got to get that together. That's not okay.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, I was going to show up for them. And still to this day, I'm unsure, like holistically, like all the girls I played with, I don't know that they know that. And so I think that was kind of a hard pill to swallow over time, but it did show me like, you do have to be taking inventory of yourself, like based on other people. Like you have to make sure that you're getting that feedback from other people as well.
Just because you think it doesn't always mean that it's being portrayed.
And I think a lot of girls struggle with that. Like I think it's so common. So I'm glad that we're talking about it. I know Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she passed, had a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of like, inspire people, like have a goal and inspire people with the way that you're acting towards it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think it's a miscommunication when you're not able to convey like what you're saying, like your love for your teammates and wanting them to call them to hire and take them along. And so I think while that's something that people struggle with on the court, that's also just like life. Like it's so common to have these miscommunications. So I think sport really helps us bridge the gap, or at least work on it earlier before we enter into like the real and working world where, it's not so much a team thing. It's not so much like you're face to face with them all the time. Like it might be through email rather than like literally just talking to them about it. And so that's a great place to just work on it because it's a skill you're going to need for life. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit the bell notifications so that you don't miss a video that we put out. Keep in mind, RCA is a podcast, so you can check us out wherever you stream podcasts. Also, follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, and if you really love our content, you can become a patron. You give to us monthly, and we give you exclusive content. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.